The Andy Poland Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Well, the Orioles and Nationals haven't exactly become the rivalry that the Redskins and the Cowboys had in the 70s and the 80s. But we had a classic last night, and maybe this can fuel the series forward. I know they've been playing almost every year for the past, 17, 18 years. And there's another Battle of the Beltways coming up in Baltimore later this season. But for one game and for one night, they gave us something to chew on. And I think that's encouraging, really, for both teams, as the Orioles stay in first place and the Nationals drop back to 500, but they look like they're a team on the rise and almost pulled off their Major League leading 13th comeback last night. We'll get to that, and, of course, we will get to the NBA playoffs. A lot to chew on from last night. And Rick Carlisle, who took the high road after Game 1 of the Pacers' loss to the Knicks, well, he's kind of done an about-face on that, and we'll talk about what the Pacers are sending to the league. 78 plays over the first two games where they feel like they got jobbed. We'll talk about that. Also, the other day, and I should have mentioned this yesterday, but Austin Rivers, who's now with ESPN after playing in the NBA, I don't know, 12 years, 13 years, whatever, the son of Doc Rivers, dropped this little nugget. He says there are about 30 guys in the NBA who could go right to the NFL. And he says there really aren't any NFL players who could play in the NBA. And he may be right about the second part of that, but 30 guys who could make that transition, yeah. See what happens once they get hit in the mouth, how it feels. It's the old, Mike Tyson line. Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And you don't get hit necessarily in the mouth, but you get hit in the head, you get hit in the body, and the contact is what drives a lot of guys away, not just at the NFL level, but even at the high school level. There are some great athletes in high school who don't play football because they don't love the contact. And you have to not only love the contact, you have to embrace the contact when you get to the NFL. And while there are some incredible athletes in the NBA, doesn't necessarily translate to football. There have been those who have made it. There have been players who've played college basketball and gone on to NFL careers. I think the first one was Cornell Green, who played for the Dallas Cowboys, played at Michigan State. Here's another one, John Havlicek, who didn't play football at Ohio State, was a great quarterback in high school growing up, and Woody Hayes used to chase him around the campus trying to get him to play football, but he just played basketball. But he got a tryout with, I think it was the Cleveland Browns, after his college career ended at Ohio State, almost made the team. They took a receiver named Gary Collins instead. Collins had played at Maryland, and Havlicek said, well, I guess I'll try basketball. And he went to the Celtics, and the rest is history. So we'll get to that later this hour. But let's start with the kvetching that comes from Rick Carlisle, who, after Game 1, where there were really some questionable calls, maybe even egregious calls against his team at Madison Square Garden, said, no, I'm not going to make it about that, and said that he wasn't going to complain about the officiating. But last night, where the officiating may not have been as bad as it was in Game 1, he'd had enough, got himself ejected, and then said after the game to the media about the officiating in Game 2.
After Game 1, we always go through the film, and games where it felt like the whistles weren't balanced, and we pull the clips, and there's a way you can submit them to the MDA office. In the playoffs, when you submit things, the other team sees what you submit. And so there were 29 plays in Game 1 that we thought were clearly called the wrong way. I decided not to submit them because I just felt like we'd get a more balanced whistle tonight. It didn't feel that way. Couple examples. 5:08 of the third, the whole world knows that Halliburton's got a bad back, and Hart comes up and shoves him in the back, and it's all over Twitter right now because a few people have showed it to me, and JB DeRosa's looking right at it. You can see him. He's got vision of the play, and he shoves Ty right into the corner, and there's no whistle, right in the back. And so that was shocking, and there are many others, but I can promise you that we're going to submit these tonight. New York can get ready; they'll see them too. I'm always talking to our guys about not making it about the officials, but we deserve a fair shot, and it's just not. There's not a consistent balance, and that's disappointing. So, give New York credit for the physicality that they're playing with. But their physicality is rewarded and ours is penalized, just time after time. And so, it's just I'm just really disappointed. The two technicals, you got to make a stand for your guys. You got to stand up for what's right and what's not right, and that was it. And so, we need to get home. We need to play better.
Yeah, they go to Game 3. That'll be tomorrow night at Indianapolis. Carlisle talking about the fact they come from a small market, playing at Madison Square Garden. He said small market teams deserve an equal shot. They deserve a fair shot no matter where they're playing. He's probably going to be fine for this. I don't think he's going to be suspended. But he has gone as far as this, according to Brian Windhorst of ESPN, that they have submitted now 78 plays that they say were incorrectly called in the first two games. You heard Carlisle mention the 29 from Game 1 that he didn't submit. Well, he's putting those alongside the 49 that Windhorst says the Pacers have found went against them and were incorrectly called last night. All that's going to the NBA office. What's going to happen? Probably nothing more than just a fine for Carlisle, but I guess he's made his point, and he hopes that, that'll give him a little bit of an edge when they go to Indianapolis, and if they win one of the two there, that they would go back to New York and maybe he'd get a break there. Reaction from the inside the NBA crew, Shaq and Charles Barkley last night, their reaction is to Rick Carlisle, hey, stop whining.
Nobody in the game has been fouled more than me. But the greatest day of my life is when I called my father complaining. Says, I don't want to hear it. So my point is, okay, you're not getting a whistle. What you have to do as a player, one, you make them call fouls. You play in a way to where, okay, this guy fouled me. I'm going to show you that he's fouled me. Or you play through it, or you don't worry about it. Because all these things come into play, and the ones that overcome these things are the ones that we know to be great. You don't think Michael Jordan got fouled? You don't think Larry Bird got fouled? Like, we complain a little bit, but once it gets to the point to where they're not doing anything about it, then you got to step up. Then you got to say, like, for example, they used to tell me, I'm going to foul you and send you to the line. I'm not an 80% free throw shooter, but every now and then I tuck that elbow in. And I knock it down. I'm not complaining about the calls you foul me. Say, you going to foul me? Okay. One thing, when you foul me, I'm going to touch you up. I'm going to let you know that I do not enjoy being fouled, and then I'm going to put it in the ref's hand. If I get an offensive foul, cool. If I don't, but I'm not sitting there complaining. I understand his pain. I understand what he's going through. But as a Pacer player, you have to forget all that and play in a way to where the officiating does not matter.
Well, let me say this. You're not going to get any calls on the road in the playoff. That ship is sailed. Rick can stop it. You automatically assume, you should always assume the home team going to get more calls because the refs, they got feelings. They get tired of getting booed. They'll react if they miss a call. The crowd got to go crazy. So, and I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to work the officials, but you have to always assume you're going to get job on the road. All the close calls going to go to the home team. I've always felt like that. Even to this day when I'm watching games, if there's any close calls, I always think it's going to go to the home team.
Well, it did. Indiana made 17 or shot 17 free throws. The Knicks made 18. So it was 22 to 17 in terms of calls. 5 more free throws shot by the Knicks last night. And probably both right. I mean, you need to stop whining, and you do get the call on the home court. But Carlisle's trying to stand up. And there was, tons and tons of discussion after game one that there really were some egregious calls made against the Indiana Pacers. Now, the NBA puts out a 2-minute report and says, yeah, we screwed this up, we screwed that up. Mike Breen, who is the Knicks announcer, this was before last night, he was on Dan Patrick yesterday, but is the Knicks regular season local TV announcer, and, of course, is the number one announcer for ESPN/ABC. He'll be doing tomorrow night's game at Indianapolis. Here's what he says about the 2-minute report.
I don't think it has any value anymore. When it first came out, I thought, okay, this will be interesting. You get to see, and they check, and they want transparency, and you like that. It's a good thing to have. But I think it's outlived its worth because all it does is get people upset. If you and I sat down and we watched, say, the 85 finals with the Lakers and the Celtics, I guarantee you every single one of those games, in the last 2 minutes, there'll be 3 or 4 missed calls or incorrect no calls or whatever the way they phrase it. It's happened all the time. But now because we have replay, now because, as we know with television, there's so many more cameras focusing on every little thing. Now that we have social media, it's a huge thing. And it is, and it's important. And they have to get these calls right at the end of games. But this has been going on for decades in the NBA. It is part of it. The officials, like coaches and players, are human, and they make mistakes as well.
That's Mike Breen with Dan Patrick yesterday. The other storyline, and it's not all officiating, it's injury now. And while the Knicks did win this game, they came from behind down 10 at the half to win by 9. You got to wonder about what it's going to be like for them the rest of the way. Now, they got, and ironically, on the 54th anniversary of Willis Reed limping out of the tunnel and helping the Knicks to beat the Lakers in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, May 8th, 1970. He scored the first 2 baskets for the Knicks, then sat out the rest of the game. It was really the Walt Frazier game. He had 38 points. Probably doesn't get enough credit for what he did, but that gave the Knicks the victory over the Lakers in their first NBA championship. So last night in the first half, Brunson, after scoring only 5 points, goes down, sits out the final 15 and a half minutes of the first half. Knicks were up 7 when he left. They were down 10 at the half. He comes out at halftime, tests out the foot. I don't know whether they shot him up or whether they taped him up or whatever, but he was able to play in the second half and play very well. He scored 24 of his 29 points in the second half, and just for the numbers, the Knicks were plus 26 with Brunson on the floor. They were minus 15 when he wasn't playing. So he makes an enormous difference for them. And while he was able to gut it out in this game, what does this mean for the rest of the series? This is probably not an injury that's going to heal before he takes off, for the summer and allows it some time. Will he be able to limp through the rest of this series and whatever is next for them? We'll have to see. But the value of him on the floor, those are the numbers, plus 26 minus whatever when he's off the floor. This is more from Mike Breen, who has seen all of Jalen Brunson in his Knicks career. Remember that he was drafted in the second round by Dallas in 2018, and then in 2022 he signed a free agent contract with the Knicks, and they were happy to get him, but nobody, including Mike Breen, realized he would be this good.
Loved him when he was in Dallas, thought it was a terrific pickup, had no idea that he would reach this level. I don't think his dad thought he would reach this level. It's been one of the great ascensions that I've ever seen in terms of, good solid player can help a team win to being one of the best players in the NBA. It's a remarkable story, especially when you think of all that goes back to the history of it. I mean, Leon Rose was Rick Brunson's agent. Rick was his first client. He's known Jalen since he was a kid. He's his godfather. And here the three of them are all in the midst of one of the best runs the Knicks team has had in many, many years.
How do you explain Brunson's greatness?
Well, number one, I know what everybody says. It's the most incredible work ethic you could ever see. All these these movements he has with the footwork, and his footwork is as good as anybody. He practices them all the time. He's in the gym all the time. He does everything from working on his game to getting proper rest to eating the right way. He's so driven to be the best player he can be. Now, I said when he came in, and I've said this about some others as well, I don't know what his potential is, but the one guarantee that I have is that he will reach that potential. That's the kind of work ethic he has.
Says Mike Breen on Jalen Brunson, and the hope is he can be healthy for Game 3 tomorrow night. The other concern is OG Anunoby, who checked out after scoring 28 points with what looks like a hamstring injury. And he's been playing big minutes for them. He's been playing like 46 minutes a game over the last 3 games prior to this. So that's going to be a big loss if he can't play coming up tomorrow night. And then, the question about Jalen Brunson and the foot. Yes, sometimes you on adrenaline, you can get through one game. With only 1 day rest going into tomorrow night, can he be ready to play? That's going to be something to keep an eye on. But a lot of drama in this series, and where we've had, some blowouts early on. This one shapes up, especially if tomorrow night that Indiana can win the game, then we got a real series going on. We got more games tonight. I don't think there's much hope for excitement in the Cleveland and Boston game. Cleveland lost by 25 in the opening game. Game 2 tonight, I would expect Boston to win pretty easily. And then really this is, I don't think it's a absolute must game because they're playing in Oklahoma City, but Dallas has to show better than they did in Game 1. And there's reason to believe that injuries are starting to affect them, and this just may be too much for them with Oklahoma City. So we could have the end of 3 series pretty quickly. We have to wait till tomorrow night for Game 3 of that really intriguing Nuggets-Timberwolves series because, Nuggets defending champs, they got worked in Game 2, held to 80 points, 106. They lost by 7 in the first one. Then they lose this one, just totally locked down defensively by Minnesota. Is there a rebound for them coming up in the next game tomorrow night, which would be Game 3 of that series. We'll talk about that, plus what Jayden Daniels says about his prospects of starting Game 1 for the Commanders. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Oh, Willie Ware number 5, Jayden Daniels. We'll find out tomorrow when the Commanders open up rookie camp what he said about the number when he appeared on Keyshawn Johnson's podcast the other day. We'll get to that, plus what are his prospects for starting the opening game, what he says about that. And let's get into the NBA playoffs, shall we? As we had more intrigue, more controversy last night in New York as they head to Indianapolis for Game 3. And then we also wait for tomorrow night, see if the Minnesota Timberwolves can really put the stranglehold on the defending champions. They lead 2-0. They can make it 3-0 at home tomorrow night. So there's that. And the Battle of the Beltways. What a classic last night. Went to 12 innings before the Orioles won. They stay in first place, or tied for first with the Yankees. Nats drop back to 500, heading to Boston for the weekend. As a matter of fact, let me throw that in now because I don't want to forget about this. Tom Libero wrote a column about this morning that, and he wrote it before the game. So not that the game changes everything, but I think it juices up the rivalry, so to speak, a little bit. It's odd in that there are a lot of people who go to both games, both stadiums, which are, where I live in Germantown, it's a coin flip whether in terms of distance for going to Camden Yards or going to Nats Park. So, and also, it also is changed too, and it's a lot different than the Mets and the Yankees, let's say, or the Cubs and the White Sox, where you stake out your territory. We went 33 years without a baseball team, and there's generations that grew up here rooting for the Orioles. So it's kind of hard to have this hated rivalry. And Libero writes in his column today, said, I asked Washington Nationals manager Dave Martinez, who has seen 7 seasons of these Battle of the Beltways with the Orioles, if after all this time the series had actually developed into a rivalry. Honestly, no, Martinez said. It really hasn't. And going into last night's game, they played 95 times, and the Orioles held a 55-40 advantage. So that's 56-40. The two-game home-and-home series that are played and have been played between the two teams since 2006. They didn't do it the first year. I guess the Nats got here because they were working under the old Expos schedule. But, we're coming up on 20 years of this, and it's been dominant by Baltimore. And the Baltimore Orioles are the better team this year. They're tied for first place. But as far as the rivalry, he says it's really in the courtroom. The bitter, drawn-out, well-documented battle between the Orioles and Nationals over television revenue they share as partners from the Mid-Atlantic Sports Network. And you probably heard about this, read about this. David Rubenstein, when he bought the Orioles, indicated that they were going to resolve this thing. It's been tied up in the courts since the Nationals got here. Like they were supposed to split the television revenue evenly, but it hasn't worked out that way. Nats have had to go to court and win, but it takes time, it takes money, and they've only gotten up to 2016. They got to go through the last 6 years of this to get this all straightened out. This is what Libero writes about the situation. He says, Rubenstein is warm and cuddly and lovable, not the combative Peter Angelos. On Friday, he will be the guest splasher in the bird bath in Section 86 at Camden Yards during the second and third innings of their game with the Arizona Diamondbacks. He has done some humorous promos referring to himself as Ruben Splash, but I don't believe he's welcomed his new neighbors and written any checks yet to the Nationals for the $100 million plus that is already due and settled upon, according to reports in MASN revenue from 2012 to 2022. According to sources, the Nationals have not yet gotten those payments unless the learners are keeping it quiet, or maybe with MASN hemorrhaging subscribers for years, like the rest of the cable business, the money may not be there. And Libero says, I learned that they are currently taking depositions from the MASN share to be divided starting in 2022. So much for no more lawyers. Let's not forget that the learners are not warm and cuddly and lovable. They are just as combative as Angelos was, and turning it over to the business people, as Rubenstein suggested he hopes to do, may not make things any easier. I can assure you that if the roles were reversed, the Nationals were the primary stakeholder in MASN and the Orioles were the stepchild partner, Angelos would have had to fight for every penny due in court that the learners have had to do. So there's also the theory that once they get this straightened out, maybe the learners put the team up for sale again. That could be possible. The commercial real estate business that they have made all their money in, that's in the toilet right now. So, whether or not they have said that we're not selling anymore, but that doesn't mean they couldn't put it back up for sale. And I saw Barry's Verluga the other day say he wouldn't be surprised if there is another pitch made by Ted Leonsis to buy the team. So we'll see where that goes. Anyway, back to what happened in New York last night. The headline is this. The headline is that the Pacers, according to Brian Windhorst, have submitted 78 plays from the first two games of the series that they feel went incorrectly against them. You had Rick Carlisle get thrown out last night, and they identified 29 questionable calls from Game 1 and 49 from last night that they have submitted to the league office. Where that's going to go is probably nowhere, but Carlisle's making his point, and he said small market teams deserve an equal shot. They deserve a fair shot no matter where they're playing, meaning he thinks that they got hosed, playing in big Madison Square Garden with the Knicks, who the league would love to have in the finals or certainly the semifinals against the Celtics, which looks like that's the way it's heading. That's more attractive for eyeballs, and the league offices are in New York. Any kind of conspiracy you want to come up with. So that is the story that most people are talking about. But there's another story, and that's the Knicks, who may be in some trouble here. Even though they lead 2-0 going into Game 3 tomorrow night in Indianapolis, they're hurting right now. And the Jalen Brunson injury, though he pulled a Willis Reed on the 54th anniversary of the original Willis Reed, where he limped out of the tunnel and scored the first two baskets for the Knicks in Game 7 against the Lakers, and they won their first championship. Brunson coming out of the locker room after spending the last 15 minutes of the first half in there with a foot injury and scoring 24 of his 29 points in the come-from-behind win, 130-121. What about with the foot now, and is it going to be a lingering issue through the playoffs? Can they get him ready to play tomorrow night? And also, OG Anunoby, who had 28 points last night and went out with a hamstring injury. What about him? The depleted Knicks heading into Game 3 tomorrow night. Brian Windhorst on ESPN last night addressing that.
An incredible Knicks comeback, Bri, obviously fueled by Jalen Brunson, but now he's banged up, and OG Anunoby too, and Mitchell Robinson is done for the year. What are you hearing about the Knicks' overall health going forward?
Well, Jalen Brunson didn't acknowledge he even had a foot injury, but obviously when he went back for 15 minutes of game time in the first half, he was getting his foot worked on. He then needed to try to test it out in the moments when he came out during halftime to feel how that foot went. He didn't show any significant issues with it, but the Knicks did take the ball out of his hands a little bit in that third quarter and run through Josh Hart as he warmed up. The big question will be, how will it feel tomorrow and then into Friday's Game 3? As for OG Anunoby, he very clearly has a hamstring injury. Tom Thibodeau did not want to talk about it. He's very likely headed for an MRI tomorrow. It would not be surprising if he misses some time. And I just want to point out, Anunoby had played in 46 minutes on average in the 4 games leading up to this. This is the most he's played in a 4-game stretch in his career. He very clearly popped that hamstring on an all-out sprint that he was having in the third quarter off a brilliant actual pass from Brunson. So he was having one of his best games as a Knick, and his scoring in the first half kept them afloat when Brunson went out. So very bittersweet for him, but it's very possible the Knicks will be down another player pending Brunson heading into Game 3.
Anunoby was terrific in Game 2. He was very good in Game 1 as well. Brian, as for Indiana, they head back home down 2-0. And at the end of this game, Rick Carlisle was ejected. What did you make of his comments following the game?
Well, he's still mad about Game 1. He was remarkably calm and took a remarkable high road after the events and the calls of Game 1, where there's several calls that the NBA acknowledged went against the Pacers. And I think that, everything in the emotion at the end of the game and that double dribble that was overturned got to him. He came into the press conference in the post game and said that they flagged 29 different plays from Game 1 that they thought were suspect calls, and then they didn't send that to the league because they wanted to take the high road. I would expect they will be sending a big amount of calls from this game, although I felt that this game wasn't nearly as egregious as in Game 1. I think the Pacers were very frustrated, but I'm going to point out he still allowed 57% shooting to the Knicks in this game, and he made a decision to not play T.J. McConnell, who was a very effective defender both in Game 1 and in the second half of Game 2 on Jalen Brunson, the best defender they've had on Jalen Brunson. He took him out for his normal rest at Game 7. Brunson scored 10 points in that last 7 minutes, and he admitted that he may reconsider putting McConnell more on Brunson down the stretch. McConnell, for his part, said he totally supported Rick Carlisle's decision. So the Pacers have some adjustments they can make. They're fuming about the officials, especially Rick Carlisle, but there's more going on there in this series.
Game 3 tomorrow night. That's Brian Windhorst, ESPN, last night on the and I think the Anunoby injury is something to be concerned about, and the Brunson. If Brunson is able to come back 100% and play, that's fine. But we've seen this before. Somebody guts it out with an injury, and you have the recovery time, and he's not the same. Or, God forbid that this could result in a fracture or something like that. When you're masking the pain, which they do with these things, guys get shot up. What could happen? So that's real concern, and that could totally flip the series. Looking to flip the series is the Denver Nuggets, who dropped the first 2 games in Minneapolis, and they're heading home. Dropped the first 2 games at home, and now are heading on the road, trying to do something that only 5 teams in NBA history have ever done, and that's to win a series after losing the first 2 at home. They do dodge a bullet with Jamal Murray, who may be playing hurt. That may be part of the problem, but his frustration got the best of him in that loss the other night, where they lost by 26 and scored only 80 points. Tossed a towel and a heat pack on the court. There was a big cry for suspension. The referee, who didn't see it, didn't call a technical, said, if I had seen it, it would have been a technical. The only way that I throw him out of the game is if he's throwing it at a specific individual. Well, it looked like he was throwing it at a referee, and didn't hit anybody. It was a towel followed by a heat pack. And yesterday the league fined him $100,000, which he has apologized for. He says, it is what it is. I take everything in full responsibility. So on to the next. Asked whether his punishment, he had expected the fine and felt the punishment was appropriate. He said, yeah, on to the next. I mean, 2 days ago, not much for me to say about it right now. Mike Malone, his coach, is saying, you guys need to straighten up, particularly you. He said, we're the reigning champs. Act like it and play like it. After the fine was announced, this was the reaction last night on PTI from Tony and Mike.
Tony, did the league get the punishment right?
Okay, so discipline and punishment are touchy and tricky things. They are a balancing act. What Jamal Murray did by throwing first the towel and then the heating pad, which, as you say, got on the court, somebody could have tripped on it, broken an ankle. What he did was childish and petulant, and he looked like a spoiled brat. And in the regular season, Mike, I think they'd have sat him down with a suspension. But these are the playoffs. This is where the NBA makes money, with eyeballs on the games and ratings matter. Denver's the defending champion. They're down 0-2. They're going to Minnesota. If they don't win both, they're not going to win this series. Jamal Murray has stunk in the playoffs so far. He's shooting 37.5% from the field. He was 3 for 18 in this game we're talking about, which is John Stark's land. But he's the second best player they got. If you take him off the court, you're killing that team. So in the sense of balance for what the playoffs are, I'll say it's okay just to find him and not sit him.
I might point out, Tony, that he did win 2 games in these playoffs.
That's right.
As much as he may have stunk statistically so far, he won 2 games with buzzer beaters and put himself on a short historic list. But now to the punishment. It's weak. It's weak need. And here's why. Jamal Murray, whose exemplary behavior has characterized his career. This is the first run-in. Jamal Murray didn't have run-ins. It's not Draymond Green, okay? But he threw something at an official. He did. He had intent. He threw this thing at Mark Davis. There's no denying that. I don't want to get a call from the league office saying, how do you know? We all know. Don't think we're stupid. So what does he have to do? Does he have to hit the official? He threw something at an official. If you bump an official in any sport, you're suspended. So he threw something at him, and the league lets it go. I've been going back and forth on this because Richard Jefferson, like you, made a really compelling case about postseason and regular season. And I get that, Tony, and I lean that way until I think one more time, not only could he have hurt players on the court, a teammate or an opponent, he threw something at an official.
Mike, I get it. I get it. And I'll just be very brief about this. He did that. But if you want to keep him in the game, you can say, nobody got hurt. It didn't hit anybody. Nobody got hurt. And we can have him in the playoffs if you want to do that. You think it's weak. I think it's a delicate balance.
I think it's something that Denver has to have if they're going to compete in this series. And we got Game 3 coming up tomorrow night. The now 3-time MVP, Nikola Jokic, who needs to have a better game than he had in Game 2, where he had only 16 points. They're going to need a big game. And, Murray, it's probably the frustration of the injury. You see him limping, even though he's hit a couple of big shots to get them to this point. He's not 100%, and that's probably leading to the frustration as well. But you can't do that. You just can't throw stuff on the court. If a fan does that, the fan's ejected, maybe even banned from the arena. You can't have players doing that. It's just a terrible, terrible look for the league, and fortunately, nobody got hurt on that. Coming up, Jayden Daniels on the Keyshawn Johnson podcast, revealing a couple of things. Talked about how he was able to step it up for his senior year, won the Heisman Trophy at LSU. A little bit on the draft process. I know he is. You've heard him downplay this big controversy that was going on with the Top Golf that, oh, my God, they brought in all the quarterbacks at once. He addresses that. And most importantly, what he's been told about starting week 1. We'll get to that and more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Tony's coming up at 11 o'clock today. Got Tony yesterday, today, and tomorrow as he shifts his schedule around a little bit. So Tony on a Thursday, kind of an unusual thing. We'll get that at 11 o'clock. So Keyshawn Johnson, you remember him on ESPN for many years. He co-hosted the morning show here for a little while in that revolving door before we have now unsportsmanlike. And they had a big purge at ESPN, and he wound up at Fox. He lives in Los Angeles, and that's where they're based. And so along with whatever shouting he does with Skip Bayless, he also does his own podcast called All Facts, No Breaks. And he does it with his son. It's not good. I mean, like most things that Keyshawn does, it's about Keyshawn. And the reason that I watched it yesterday is he had Jayden Daniels on. And I think there's some kind of a family connection there. Daniels is from Los Angeles, and I believe somewhat distantly Keyshawn is related to Jayden, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, they sat down for an hour, and Keyshawn has his kid there, Keyshawn Jr., with like a list of questions if things kind of bog down. So every once in a while, he goes over to Keyshawn Jr. and he reads a question from the list. But I've pulled the highlights of it, and let's start with and he does it in a way that a lot of us do these type of podcasts. When you do a sit-down with somebody, you go through his life. So they talked about the senior year at LSU and how he made this giant step up from what he would have been was a 3rd or 4th round pick last year to the number 2 pick of the draft this year, and how that senior year unfolded.
Caleb Williams situation in Chicago, it'll probably never happen again.
Facts.
Because when you're the number 1 overall pick, you go to sorry-ass teams like I went to. The year I got there, 2-14. The year I landed, we went 1-15. Then we had to turn it around when we got a new coach. That's just what happens with number 1 overall picks. But you lit up college football at LSU. You had one of the craziest seasons. You led the nation in several categories, including passing TDs 40, total TDs 50. I didn't realize you rushed for 1,100, but you had 1,100 yards rushing. You had a passer rating of 200, the highest in FBS football history, which I didn't think that was, when you look at that, and you look at your accomplishments and the things that you did at LSU, where does that put you in mindset?
I'll just say, it just give me more confidence. Basically, I know I still got room to grow. And just every year I've just been improving. So I'm excited to see this next year, learning, going through what I got to go through. And at some point, kind of whenever my prime hit, I'm excited to see where I'm at.
What was you chasing though at LSU? Was you chasing money? The Heisman? What was you chasing? Not money like that, Keyshawn.
No, I hear you.
Like draft pick. What was your mindset?
Win the Heisman and be a first-round pick.
Mm-hmm. So that's really you really wanted to win the Heisman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keyshawn, he wanted to win the Heisman, and he won the Heisman. This is about the draft process, and I don't know if there's any other team that's ever had as much uproar about what was a pretty simple thing, where they brought in all 4 of the 4 of the 5 quarterback prospects. They knew that would be on the board when they picked number 2. And the reason that they did it is Josh Harris, the owner, happened to have that couple of days of availability, and he wanted to be there. And a lot of people said, they're not giving the enough time to Jayden Daniels. He's mad. He wants to go to the Raiders, blah, 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 blah. Wasn't that at all. So this is Jayden Daniels with Keyshawn discussing how the draft process went this year.
It was a trip. It was long. It's a long process, and that's what you sit back and you look at it. You from January to April, end of April, waiting to hear your name called, waiting to hear be a part of a team again. But everything in between, man, you gotta work out. May gotta fly here. And
how many trips did you take?
3.
Oh, so you just did 3?
Yeah. 3.
That's not bad. That's not bad at all.
So yeah, but like after a pro day, you on the road, and I was on the road like that. But I know a couple of my teammates, Brian Thomas, he was flying everywhere for like 2.5 weeks straight.
We call that the Chitlin circuit.
Yeah, because you don't know, he could have went from early in the first to the third pick 32, so he ain't know.
Yeah.
So man, it was just like, man, you flying everywhere. And for me, during that time, that's when I had to make my tour for all the accolades I won in college. So I'm working out, and then one day I might have to catch a flight to go. Like I had to go catch a flight to Dallas to go pick up the David O'Brien.
You wasn't on the PJ?
Nah, man.
First of all, you get the NIL money.
Oh.
Second of all, I'm sure did you sign a shoe deal beforehand?
No.
So you didn't sign a shoe deal before the draft?
I didn't.
Oh yeah, see, I did mine right after the Rose Bowl. Give me that.
So you was on the PJ?
Yeah, I flew, for sure. Way back then, of course. Come on, this is me you talking to. You know what I'm saying? I just would think, I would think seriously, all seriousness, I would just think that because your schedule is crazy, and I remember coming out of college how crazy my schedule was, so we made sure.
But you was a number over a pick as a receiver, though.
Man, you the number 2.
But that's unheard of.
Man, stop it, though, man. You the number 2 pick. You really think 2 and 1 is different? It's the same thing.
As a receiver, though.
But that's because that's something different. I was different. So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but it's different though. The money, the second pick in the draft versus the first pick in the draft, so it's $1 million difference.
But as a receiver.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the position.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm just talking about how you was moving around and doing things after you left the combine. So at the combine, what was like because the combine was weird. I mean, I felt I was fresh, so I was just walking around. For real.
I didn't do anything at the combine.
But you interviewed.
I interviewed and I left.
Yeah, what was the weirdest questions?
I ain't getting no weird questions.
You don't think you got any weird ones?
I ain't getting none.
For real? Yeah, I guess.
I ain't getting no weird question.
They slowed that down though too. Now they stopped because they done been under the microscope for years with some of the questionable questions that they used to ask people.
The only question I got was, team asked me, was like, why you not doing nothing at the combine? Like, this stuff seemed effortless to you, throwing and running, so why you not doing? And I was like, man, y'all just seen the tape, like, just turn on the tape.
Jayden Daniels, and we learn a new term here, at least for me. Maybe you know this. Did you know that a PJ is a personal jet? Did you take a PJ? That's funny. So that's Daniels on the draft process. Not a big deal about the 4 quarterbacks coming in at once. This is now the question to Daniels about what kind of a quarterback are the Commanders going to get?
A competitor and a dog that's going to do whatever it takes to win. Try to change the trajectory of the franchise. You know, not in year 1, but hopefully down the road. You know, it's going to be a process. So, you know, it's something we're willing to work to. I mean,
yeah. So when you looked, so somebody I know called me about Washington, and they was a little scared, nervous, because they brought in everybody all at once. They called me spooked. You know what I'm saying? They called me, what you think, right? So I had to tell them, I say, look, just chill. He's going to be the number 2 pick of the draft. This is just a process that's going on. So when you looked at that, when they was bringing in all these quarterbacks at the same time, what was your emotions like? Were you like, man, they getting ready to trip? Or were you just like, whatever?
I was cooling because I just left the Giants and flew to Washington.
Okay.
And, I mean, I knew all those guys there, so it was like, it was like, I ain't really tripping. It just felt like a big recruiting visit, was what it kind of was. Like, they was just telling me, like, yeah, I don't really want, like, the visit to be all uptight about football. Like, they want to, you know, let us have fun, you know, because we've been going through this for so long. And that's something that they took from the Niners and stuff like that and other teams. It was just different because it was 4 of the top 5 quarterbacks there, which, you know, kind of blew up on social media. So that's the only thing that was different.
But you had already knew him from whatever college football, 7-on-7 tournaments.
Yeah, I've been
whatever.
knowing them. I mean, I trained with Mike and JJ.
Okay.
All pre-draft. I met Drake last summer, so like we was all cool.
Yeah.
We chilling.
Yeah, people was going crazy, right? Some people was going real crazy. Anyway, that would be somebody that I know close to you, but we're going to leave that alone right now. So when you look at the system that y'all potentially could run, this which I don't really love, but I don't know if y'all going to actually run this particular air raid system in Washington. How familiar are you with those concepts and the things that Cliff Kingsbury, the new offensive coordinator, in his past has run, whether it was at Texas Tech or at Texas A&M in college or at Arizona in the pros, and now people assume that he's going to run the same thing at Washington?
I mean, just learning the playbook. It's kind of like going back and watching with stuff. It's like it's different than the air raid. We're not going to air the ball out 50 times a game.
Yeah, y'all gonna lose if y'all. I'm just being honest with you.
Like we're not gonna. Like,
you
gotta have balance.
You gonna get the beat out of you, and they gonna you don't want that.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest.
But
with
one thing about Cliff, Cliff is open minded.
Yeah,
like, he ain't the OC that's like, man, it's my way. Like we gotta do X, Y, Z. Just having conversation with him was like, man, what do you like? How can we help the team be better? And I'm like, we bouncing ideas back and forth off each other, but. I like his scheme, honestly. I think it suits me. And obviously, you got to evolve with the times. You got to be able to have balance, keep a defense honest now, especially with all those athletes out there, too.
Who's the backup? Or not the back. Who's the other quarterback,
Mariota,
so to speak?
Marcus Mariota.
Do you anticipate starting week 1?
Do I anticipate?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm confident in my abilities, but if that's a decision that they got to make, that's above
And
me.
I ain't asked you. Stop.
That's a decision.
Do you, as the number 2 pick of the draft, anticipate starting?
I mean,
or you think they're gonna bring you along slowly, so to speak?
From what I heard, when they said whenever I'm ready, I'm ready.
Yeah.
So whenever I feel like I'm ready, I'm ready.
So we'll find out. We may know a little bit more tomorrow. I highly doubt that Dan Quinn will name him the starting quarterback for week 1 at rookie minicamp, as it went for Robert Griffin III in 2012, and I think that was because he was so insecure about having Kirk Cousins there. I don't think it's going to play out that way, and I think that they will go through camp. Now, he's got to get a lot of reps. He's got to get a lot of work. If this season, if he's going to be a factor, if he's going to play, he's got to get a lot of the practice reps. But I think if they feel like he's not ready, they won't start him, and that's why they got the quarterback that they did. That's why that they brought in somebody who's been a starter in the league before, and somebody in Mariota who they feel has the right attitude. He was once the number 2 pick of the draft. He got force-fed and it didn't work out, and he's bounced around the league a lot. He's been a starter. He's been a backup. And as he said in his news conference, he's ready to do it. But that would be what we call the takeaway bite from that, where Jayden Daniels is asked about starting week 1, and it sounds like it's not going to be anything like the Caleb Williams situation where, he made it clear. Caleb Williams gave an interview, by the way, recently, where he said that the biggest disappointment of his career was that he had to sit behind Spencer Rattler when he got to Oklahoma as a freshman. Well, what did he expect when he got there? Spencer Rattler was a Heisman Trophy candidate going into that season. Of course, they were going to give him the opportunity to start. He felt like he still should have beaten him out. Daniels seems to have a different attitude about things. Last thing is the number, which, is a thing. It's a thing in a period of time where there's no real football to talk about, so it's kind of manufactured football. But Jayden Daniels has worn 5 throughout his college career. In his Twitter handle, he has the number 5 in it. He is going to be, they hope, the face of the franchise. They want to have him in something that he's going to feel comfortable. Now, Tress Way has worn 5 for 10 years. He's been a great player here, a Pro Bowl player, really great in the community, great representative of the team. And there's a rumor that in preparation for rookie minicamp tomorrow, there'll be a video put out where essentially Tress Way gifts the number 5 to Jayden Daniels. But if that's in the works and Daniels knows about it, he wasn't letting on yet the other day when he talked to Keyshawn.
What number you gonna wear?
I don't know yet.
You know, they didn't give you your because you haven't been to camp or nothing, huh?
Nah, I haven't got to camp. So we gonna see.
Trying to think,
I get up
who
there
wore
tomorrow.
nickel? Who had the nickel before?
Or who got it right now? The punter, Tress
Oh
Way.
yeah, that's over.
Oh, you gotta just
No, that's
throw
over,
him some
man.
bread.
I'm not giving
throw him
them
a cool 20.
Keyshawn.
Throw him like 10 racks.
Keyshawn, not
are you
giving him
betting,
a
Malik?
dime. Especially if he ain't gonna be there.
He a captain.
Oh yeah, you gotta give him something then.
Oh, yeah, captain?
Yeah, captain.
So he gonna be there then, possibly? I might have to wait him out, though. No, for real, though. You know, I'm gonna wait him out. I'm gonna wait him all the way out. Because, every team I've ever been on, I got my number. It wasn't,
Yeah.
But if it was a team that somebody had to know, I'm gonna wait him out.
Okay.
Yeah. Or they know they got to get that to you anyway, though. You know, you don't want to go in there like I would go in there, obviously, but yeah, I'm gonna wait him out, man. I tell dudes all I tell them all the time. They be talking about they gonna pay for it to do. I'm like, man, check the depth chart. See where you at. You know, you gotta that's real talk. Cause the dudes, man, they wanna get somebody just gave somebody like
Stephon Diggs gave 100
racks. Yeah.
Man, I'm not giving that dude $100,000 for no damn number. He gonna turn that in anyway. I'm just being honest with you. The equipment manager should already know.
All right, a couple of stories on that. One, the Cam Newton story. The Carolina Panthers in 2010 took Jimmy Clausen in the second round out of Notre Dame. He wore number 2. Cam Newton, Heisman Trophy winner, Auburn, drafted number 1 the following year by Carolina, 2011, which was the first year that Ron Rivera was a head coach. And he wanted number 2, which is what he wore in college, but he wasn't going to pay a dime to Jimmy Clausen. And realistically, he knew that Clausen wasn't going to last that long. I think he stayed around as a backup another year. Meantime, Newton wore number 1 and, started getting endorsements. That became sort of part of his identity, and he never changed back. So he never paid any money to Jimmy Clausen to get number 2, and number 1 became his number for the rest of his career, both in Carolina and when he played briefly with the New England Patriots. But the one that's here, that's local, this is Clinton Portis. So 2004, before Joe Gibbs starts his second go-round, they got to trade Champ Bailey. There's some extenuating circumstances there. It turns out to be just a terrible trade in the end, but they package a guy who's going to be a Hall of Fame corner, already off to a great start here with the Redskins, drafted in 1999. So he's already played 5 years, and he's already good, really good. And they trade him to the Denver Broncos along with a second-round pick. The way they treated draft picks in those days was criminal. They sent Bailey and a second-round pick to Denver for Clinton Portis. Now, Portis had worn number 28 when he was at college at the U, and then when he was with the Denver Broncos, he wore number 26, and he had 2 great seasons with them. He knew they weren't going to pay him. They didn't want to pay him, so they traded him to Washington. And 28, of course, he wasn't going to get because that had been Darrell Green's number, out of circulation. Now will be officially retired next season. And number 26 was worn by a defensive back by the name of Ifeanyi Oolete. So Portis, knowing that he's going to get, this new contract with Washington, wants that number, and he's going to pay whatever it takes. So they make a deal, $40,000 for Clinton to get number 26. Oolete goes to another number. There's a down payment. Clinton makes a $20,000 down payment to get the number from Oolete, with the rest to be paid out, I guess, when the season starts. Well, Oolete is cut, so he's out. And Portis says, well, I was going to get the number anyway. I'm not going to give him another $20,000. It winds up in court. They go to court over this. And Clinton is, knowing, I guess, he's going to lose because they must have had a written contract or something that was official there, or half the deal had been executed since he made a $20,000 down payment. Portis winds up paying an $18,000 settlement to get the number that he would have gotten anyway with Oolete getting cut. So this number thing is crazy. And now, players have more choices than they've had in recent years because of the way that, wide receivers can wear single digits now and linebackers can wear in the teens. I mean, everything is, kind of, I don't know why it's such a big deal, but to some it is, and they will pay whatever it takes to have a certain number. So we'll find out tomorrow who is going to be wearing number 5. Tress Way won't be there, I guess, since it's rookie minicamp. And the most intriguing thing will be when Daniels trots out of the locker room with his practice jersey on and what number he will have on it. We can't stand the anticipation. It's crazy. Coming up, where have you gone, Eric Bieniemy? It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Tony's coming up at 11. What a difference a year makes. Remember a year ago as the Commanders were getting ready to open up minicamp, I think there was some excitement about this because he had really knocked it out of the park with his news conference, Eric Bieniemy. And Eric Bieniemy's name had been thrown around for years as a guy who was getting screwed in the process for head coach, that he had been with the Kansas City Chiefs, helping Andy Reid win Super Bowls, got a lot of compliments, and people were scratching their heads. Why isn't this guy a head coach? And really, he wasn't essentially an offensive coordinator. He had the title, but Andy Reid called the plays. So, going into probably what he knew was going to be his last year, with an ownership change, it was highly unlikely that Ron Rivera was going to come back for his last year of his contract and even get a contract extension. They would have had to go deep into the playoffs, which wasn't going to happen with a rookie quarterback in Sam Howell. They just, they weren't going to spend any money with Dan Snyder selling the team. So, okay, they propped up Howell and they said, oh, he looks really good. We have a lot of promise here and so forth and so on. But there was excitement about Bieniemy. Okay, he worked with Andy Reid. He helped to mold the greatest quarterback in the game in Patrick Mahomes right now. He can, and he's a disciplinarian. He can really get this team on track here, and they gave him a lot of responsibility. He was named assistant head coach. He just crushed it in all the news conferences that he did. But in the end, it didn't work. There were reports that he rubbed a lot of players the wrong way. In fact, some of them made comments that was the case. There are rumors, and he would never say it, but Terry McLaurin hated him and wasn't going to come, would have demanded a trade if they brought him back this year, all that. And at the end of the season, when Dan Quinn said, yeah, we're not going to retain you on the staff, he didn't get another job in the NFL, any job. And some thought he might go back to Kansas City. That may have been an option, but he winds up with a job as a coordinator, but not a head coach in college. He winds up as the offensive coordinator at UCLA, where Chip Kelly had left as head coach, as UCLA is joining the Big Ten. Kelly took a job. This is unbelievable in these times, but Kelly's the head coach of a high-profile program at UCLA, and he goes to become offensive coordinator at Ohio State, which, under Ryan Day, which is, really stunning, although, Day may be on the hot seat if he loses again to Michigan, so maybe Kelly can become a head coach. But the job at UCLA goes to Deshaun Foster, and Foster hired Bieniemy as his offensive coordinator. Listening to Foster speak, I can't understand what went into this. You got the fiery Bieniemy, and sounds like a guy who's like the lounge singer. This is Deshaun Foster yesterday on the Rich Eisen show on the hiring of Bieniemy as offensive coordinator and why he did it.
A real veteran coach that has real NFL knowledge, pedigree, can help teach these young players how to be pros. And then just being in my first year, I wanted a real presence as my offensive coordinator. Somebody that can, just command and really demand the kind of discipline that I want out of my players.
When did you first meet him?
I met him years ago, but I just reached out to him when the season ended.
Okay.
Once I got the job.
Once you got the gig,
yeah.
and he was going through post Commanders conversations for himself.
Yep.
Now, I can see how a guy that once essentially MF'd Adrian Peterson while coaching him, to be straight up, to an 18, 19-year-old who, as transfer portal possibilities, might just look at somebody like him, hard coaching, and that might not be a mix. How do you handle something like that?
Well, my pillars are discipline, respect, and enthusiasm. So I think as long as the respect aspect is there, you can discipline and talk to guys however, and just what I've seen him do in a little bit of time, how he befriends them. And it's not like he's attacking them. It's just what you're doing, It's not the performer, it's the performance. We're just trying to fix what you're doing. And for you to get to where you got to go, you got to get coached hard.
Well, that's that guy. I mean, he is the guy on the screen is an excellent red ass. There's just that's the way that he is. I'm just concerned that maybe some kids in the 21st century just aren't accepting of that sort of.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there are some kids that haven't, but we haven't had anybody hit the portal or.
No, I've noticed that.
No,
I'm
and I'm kind of the same way.
Okay, so there's a pod and there's two P's right there. It's the HC and the OC. Okay, fantastic. And then offensively, what is this team going to look like? Would you say after the Chip Kelly era here?
Well, we know that every Michigan fan is watching this, so.
Well, I'm sitting right here.
They're going to be.
We don't play each other. I noticed they didn't put us on the schedule against each other in year one.
But you're just going to see, just like my pillars, a team that's going to play with a lot of discipline, respect, and enthusiasm. We're going to get out there. We're going to run the ball. We're going to throw passes. We're going to score touchdowns, and we're going to play hard.
I like it the way he said, "I'm the same way." Not in these interviews, you're not. And I tend to side with Eisen on this. That this could be an issue for college kids. Now, I guess they've gone through spring practice, and he says no players have been in the portal, so there's that working in his favor. But, if Eric Bieniemy chafed professional football players, grown men, what's going to happen when he's talking to 18-year-old kids who all they have to do is snap their fingers and they're in the transfer portal, and the rules of college football are if you play up to 4 games and not have it count as a year. So, freshman comes in, he's playing okay, but he's getting tired of Bieniemy. And after 4 games, he goes, I'm going to transfer. The year doesn't count. He can go someplace else and play 4 more years. I hope it works out. I think Bieniemy is a good person, does great news conferences, but the way he coached Adrian Peterson, who, by the way, was suspended for most of a year for hitting his kids with a switch and causing damage to his testicles. He had to go to the emergency room. Those guys may see eye to eye on the way discipline is done. In 2024, with 18, 19-year-old kids, I'm not sure it's the same thing. All right, coming up, got Tony today, Tony tomorrow. I will be back here tomorrow at 9 a.m.